Hello and welcome to a special episode of Sports Wrap. I am one of the hosts, Mike Wigdor, along with my friend and co-host Frank Walsh.
Hey, Mikey.
Hey, Frankie. And we have our special guest and occasional co-host on the show even, and that's Alethea McFarlane. She's here today.
Hi,
Alethea.
Hi, Alethea. Welcome
Good
again.
to see you.
Welcome again.
We don't have to.
Yeah,
Everything
decide,
is very
kids
casual
decide
on
whether
this
it's a
show,
fist bump
as you
or
can see.
yeah, right.
So,
Well,
folks,
she's not used to our
timing. I know. Timing, right?
Yeah. See how well we got that down?
I
Yeah,
see that.
so
Yeah.
good thing we got our timing down. So.
Sounds as good
You know,
as I
folks,
did it.
there's a lot going on in sports. Actually, there's not a lot going on in sports, but one topic that is going on, it comes out every so often and doesn't really get talked about enough and gets, covered up. They try to bury it, and that is domestic violence. It's been coming up. It's been heard lately by LaShawn McCoy. Then the story kind of dies and peters out, and we know that the NFL isn't doing very much about it. But there's a lady here who is working on it and doing something very much about it and very much involved, and that's Alethea. She's involved with this nonprofit organization. It's called Wilderness Heals. They do hikes and to support the Elizabeth Stone House in Boston. And Alethea, kudos to you for doing that. And we'd like, certainly, you got in touch with me, and we certainly would love to know how you got involved and how other people might be able to get involved as well.
Okay, so I got involved through a coworker that I worked with at Verizon, and this is her second year actually hiking, and she was in a domestic violence situation, so it's very near and dear to her. And I've always had an interest in domestic violence because my original thought about domestic violence was I couldn't see myself being in that situation because I consider myself a strong person and I would walk away from it until a vice president I worked for kind of sat me down one day and explained to me that it's not that easy, that most of the women who are caught into a domestic violence situation, they can't leave. They don't have the financial wherewithal to walk away from the situation. And most times when they leave, they are found by the abuser. So it's very hard to break away from the situation without support. Yeah. So when my friend asked me to do this hike, I am not a hiker. I am a princess when it comes to sleeping in my bed. And she mentioned doing hike for 3 days. I finally decided, I'm going to do it because it's for a good cause. And when you think about domestic violence, hiking up a mountain is nothing compared to a black eye or broken bones or whatever. So that was kind of my mental motivation to do it. So one of the things that the Wilderness Heals folks do is they put on practice hikes. To do practice hikes in order to do the hike. And I'm glad I did. The one thing I'm sorry I did is that I didn't do more practice hikes. So I did one hike. I went up over 4,000 feet.
So where do they do these hikes?
Into the White Mountains.
Okay.
So
New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire. So I did Mount Kinsmore, which was over 4,000 feet. I hiked with 10 ladies. Wow. All of them are hikers but me. So I thought I was going to die, that I wasn't going to make it to the top. I had my bag on and had a hard time climbing the mountains. Just wasn't secure with making those climbs. Yep. But I did it, so I know I can do it. And I really want to do it next year. That's my pledge, to do the 3 days next year. But this year, I had the opportunity to be a virtual hiker. Yeah. And so I signed up for that. And being a virtual hiker is really another arm of their fundraising. So somebody takes me up on the mountain, a picture of me up on the mountain. And my goal is to reach out to as many people as I can to raise funds. So my bogey is 1,500. And someone saw my post and volunteered to donate a 1-to-1 match. Wow. For whatever I raise. So I'm talking about it here because I believe in what the Wilderness Hills, Elizabeth Stone folks do. It's not just domestic violence. They also do some things around mental illness. They provide housing, they take care of kids, and there's just a lot of other things that goes along with the Elizabeth Stone House. And you can read about it at elizabethstonehouse.com, or you can do wildernessheelselizabethstone.org to find out more information about the organization. But what we're trying to do today is to reach out to you to help you to ask you to donate to my page so I can raise my $1,500 and get the match.
Good for you. So how would they do that then?
So you would want to go to wildernessheels.elizabethstone.org, and then do donate and search for my name, Alethea McFarlane. And then you can do the donation under that.
Excellent. That's excellent.
Any other questions?
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Well, I think my take on domestic violence is that a lot of people think that it is just the woman
Right.
who is domestically abused,
But the men.
but there are the reverse of that as well.
Yeah.
There are men who are also abused,
Yeah.
and also domestic abuse is not always physical.
Right.
right.
Could be mental.
It's a combination of mental and physical,
Yeah.
and sometimes the mental side of it, the abuse, the verbal abuse,
That's right.
It's worse.
is worse than the physical abuse because there are scars that you cannot see.
Right. Right.
And anyone who is an abuser and a habitual abuser knows that, and oftentimes hurts the woman more verbally because the woman can't really defend herself.
Right.
They don't leave the marks.
And not only that, but I'm aware of a situation myself where the person finds it very difficult to leave because,
Yes.
because they feel that this person will change.
Exactly.
He's not really like that. I
Right.
can get him to change.
Or they blame themselves
Or
that
they
they,
blame
are the
themselves,
ones
that's
who
right.
bring that on. If I
That's where the mental-
changed, then he wouldn't,
Yeah.
and then they go into denial, and it's like, well, gee, how's it going? Oh, it's going pretty well. He only blackened one eye this week, so he's getting better.
It's
It's
really sad.
it's denial, and it's
is.
very, very difficult
And
to
the
break
longer
away
it
from
is,
that.
the harder it seems to break away because they don't know anything else.
Right.
And if they don't get the support like this Elizabeth
Right.
Stone is helping,
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know where to go. They feel
That's
like
right.
they're stuck, they're embarrassed in the situation, so
Absolutely.
they don't really
Yeah.
talk about it. So they
Absolutely.
don't know what's my step. They're stuck in this situation and they can't do anything because they need the financial support.
Right.
And the other person is either the financial giver or in a stronger position than
Right.
the person
Right.
who's been abused,
Right.
Yeah.
and therefore sees that person as a dependency for them to live, and just can't see beyond getting away from this abusive
Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
to do something different for themselves.
and the
So-
second worst part about that is if there's children involved.
Yes, the children, and the
Because
children
they
see
suffer.
it.
Children are
right.
held hostage
Yeah,
or sometimes used as
Yeah.
pawns.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You
the
know.
Elizabeth Stone House also cares for the kids.
Well, I was going to say that's a
So
good
there's-
combination
Yeah.
because it's almost
Yeah.
like drug abuse, opioid
Yes.
abuse.
That's
I mean,
right.
it doesn't
Yeah.
affect just the victim,
Right.
the individual. It affects everybody.
Yeah, I was interesting to see that the Elizabeth Stone House does get involved with financial
Right.
planning
Right.
for
Yeah,
them too.
they do.
They
They
really
do,
try to
yeah.
cover all the bases to get
Yeah.
the person,
From
They-
start to finish.
yeah, so they
right,
can be
yeah.
independent. They don't have to rely on anyone. They can learn to rely on themselves.
Right. Everything they need to get
Yeah.
out of the situation
Yeah.
through the transitional period, through I'm on my own now, I can
Right.
handle this.
Yeah.
The organization cares for end to end,
Right.
not just piece parts of it, because it has to be treated that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is the organization also does some things with mental disorders, which is the
Yes.
same thing. It has to
Yes.
be treated
Yes.
from the end to end process,
Sure.
not just piece parts of it.
Absolutely.
So,
and you mentioned that we're a sports show, and you mentioned how this is oftentimes covered up
Yeah.
in sports.
Right.
Oh, that's
I mean,
right.
look at how many
Yeah.
times we've heard this over the years, or even to the
I know.
point of
Yeah.
murder.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
people have died in,
Yeah.
in shootings and stabbings
Yeah.
and
Look what Ray Rice did to his.
and
Yeah.
all of these cases,
Right.
and
Right.
they they'll get their 24-hour, 48-hour news cycle,
Yeah.
and then everybody comes out and says all of the right things, but
Right.
what's really being done? I haven't read too much other than lip service
Yeah,
about some
fluff
of the
stuff.
activities that's been done.
Fluff stuff,
They
yeah.
do covering their tails,
Right. Right.
Yeah, they don't do enough on the sports and
No.
the pro leagues with this, because you find out, you hear about it in baseball every so often when it's some player will hit somebody. I hear it every sport, football,
Yeah.
basketball.
Right. The other thing I was just thinking about with this too, it's not unique to any one class group.
Absolutely, that's a very good
It
point.
happens across the
That's
spectrum.
an excellent point.
And even the folks who are smarter, they're educated, and
Right.
they have access to money, they still see themselves like
In those
stuff. It
situations, I
doesn't
think it's more
discriminate
control.
about-
I think it's a
Yes.
question
Yeah.
of control. They want the control
right.
and the power
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
over their,
It's a power
and
thing,
it's
yeah.
not
Yeah.
just, and
Absolutely, yeah.
even though we're talking specifically domestic abuse, you see these guys out there oftentimes with their posses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that
right.
they verbally abuse them people as well, and that
Yeah.
even though it's domestic abuse with their partner, but I'm sure that some of these people transcend that onto their posses, their friends,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we've all met people that. They have a beer or two in them, and instead of patting you on the back, they come up and punch you in the arm, and
Yeah.
they manifest
They're-
all of those
they're
other
knee
things
drunks.
that,
Knee
that
drinks,
type of stuff.
yeah.
So it
Yeah.
really is like a pebble in a pond.
I think part of it too is like
Ripples.
I think part of it is that a lot of these, especially the players, a lot of them come from tough neighborhoods, tough
True.
backgrounds.
Right.
Especially basketball,
maybe
yeah,
they
basketball,
saw that
especially
too.
football, basketball, yeah.
Yeah, so they
And it
all
was
of a
accepted.
sudden,
And it was accepted.
It was accepted, but then all of
Yeah,
a sudden they become multimillionaires.
Right.
They haven't really earned it.
Right.
And their psyche has not changed. In fact, if anything, they feel more power, so they feel like they can, have more abilities. To
You're
do
absolutely
stuff.
right, but I forget which one did it first, but I think several years ago, I don't know if it was baseball or football, who stepped up to the plate and made it mandatory for these rookies and young kids
Yeah.
coming in to go through a mandatory financial counseling.
Right.
Right.
I read
That is part
yeah.
of their hiring, and they
Yeah.
bring them into financial counselors. And I think, and I'm not sure, and if not, maybe it would be a good idea that they also put them through some kind of other just life counseling as far as
Absolutely.
how to deal with that power, how to
Yeah.
deal with that money.
right. Yeah.
I mean, they have history that they can refer to say, listen, we can cite this, and
Right.
this.
Right.
Don't let this happen to you.
Right.
These are the signs. These are the resources that you can go when you feel yourself having these episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe more of that
Yeah.
needs to be done, or maybe it's done and we just don't know about it. But I don't think so.
I still think it's how do you get the victim to share
That's the problem.
That's the toughest part.
somebody
Is admitting.
that they
That's
can
right.
trust,
That's true.
that can kind of help them through the situation.
Yes.
Yeah, so-
I think that's
right.
really the big problem, because a lot of people are in the situation, they don't share it. You
Right.
see things and they cover it up,
That's
either
true.
way.
Or
And I
they-
think
or
through
they won't
education
admit it.
too. I
Right.
think through education is that obviously, the abuse part is something that starts off very minimally
Right.
and then builds up, builds up, builds
Right.
up, builds up.
Right.
And I think that if there was more education to make women and men aware of those initial signs,
Right.
Yeah.
those initial signs,
True.
because it may start off with a little
Yeah.
push.
Right.
You
That's
came
right.
home late tonight. We're gonna
Right.
give you a little push.
Right.
A week later, it might be a punch. You know what I
Right.
mean? It escalates,
Right.
escalates.
Or it might be
Yeah.
yelling and cursing
And
at
you
somebody.
cursing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
notice those initial
Right.
signs,
Yeah.
so that they can say, "Hey, listen." Warning sign number 1,
Right.
warning sign number 2, and
Yeah.
don't put them in the position
Or
where that
even-
push becomes
yeah.
the punch.
Right.
Or
just even the next time you touch me, I'm out of here.
Exactly.
Well,
Something
don't
like
you think
that,
that's probably
before
what
you can
finally
lock on
happens
it,
at the
yeah.
end when they call the Elizabeth Stone house? Do you think they're at the end of their rope when they do that?
Either that or somebody
Some
intercedes
reports,
and
yeah,
bring
some
them
of the
in.
reports,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, that's true.
I have spoken to, I was sharing this with a group, and one of the ladies in the group said she had a niece who lived in Braintree, that was abused.
Yeah.
And they made arrangements. The family got involved. That's the part you don't think about too. You know, that if the family knows,
Right.
it's a strain on them.
Right.
And the family got involved and got the person to move to North Carolina. And the next thing you know, the next day, he was there, and she went to him.
Yeah.
So it is, you know, it is something that people just feel locked in.
Right.
And she went back to him because she didn't want him to come to the house, which is what he said. If you don't meet me on the corner of whatever, I'm going to come in to the house. So now he's threatening her. And rather than say to the family, you know, I'm being threatened by a phone call or call the police or something, she ran right back to him, and the next thing they know, she was back in Braintree.
And so the same cycle goes back.
The cycle vicious, you got to break that cycle. But in another situation
until
too.
Until the man or the woman feel confident enough or have like a strong self-esteem about themselves to really fight it,
Right.
it doesn't happen. They're always going to go back, like you were saying
That's true.
earlier.
And even
it's
making
change.
Well,
The thought is
that's
it's
the
gonna
thing that's
change.
similar to the drug thing. Same thing. People
Same
go
thing, you
back
gotta
for
break the
rehab.
cycle.
Yes.
They think they're going to
Yeah.
be clear, and then the minute they're out,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, you know, and even as bad as it is, I mean, a worst case scenario is that the woman or the man doesn't speak up,
No.
continues to go through it, go
right.
through it, and then what happens at the end? That person, the victim, snaps, comes home and stabs her husband to death or shoots him,
That's
Yeah.
right.
and then all of a sudden the script is flipped,
Right.
and this person
Right.
is the one on trial, and this
Goes to
person has to
jail.
Yeah.
justify the existence. Kind of like the old burning
right.
bed,
Yeah.
you know, Farrah
Yeah.
Fawcett and the burning bed,
Yeah.
you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's the, you know, that's ultimately the worst case scenario, and they're, you know, it's a shame that it has to escalate
Right.
that far.
Yeah.
Because
But it
I
does.
could not imagine myself, I'm sure you, as a man, I'm sure
Yeah.
you as a
Yeah.
woman could
Yeah.
not imagine yourself
Right.
what it would take
Yeah.
to push you to that point where you would either shoot somebody,
Right.
kill somebody,
Right.
or
Yeah.
whatever, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and-
especially
and
if you have
it
kids,
happens.
Especially if you have kids around.
It happens.
It's even worse, like you said, because the kids see it,
Yeah.
and they're scared, and you know.
But it always starts with the person's perception of themselves. You know,
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
feel helpless, worthless, not worth it, kind of thing.
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem.
Yeah.
All of that is there. And then once it starts happening, they kind of forgive it for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Dr.
Yeah, it
Laura
won't happen
says.
again.
Dr. Laura
Yeah, it'll
used
go
to say,
away.
whoever the person is before you marry him, that's who it's going to be when
That's
you
right.
marry him. Nobody changes
Yeah.
like that. You know, when you
Yeah,
have
actions,
that situation.
actions talk. Believe what you see.
Yeah, but it's hard because the embarrassment, the shame, you know, not wanting to talk about it.
Well, that's why this is so good, this Elizabeth Stone, because they
Yeah.
are successful. They
Yeah.
have like 500 people, I think, a year. They say
Yes.
that they.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're trying to
Yeah.
go into
They
a
wanna
brand
get-
new facility or
They're
something.
trying to move into a new
Where
facility.
where are they located now?
They're in Roxbury, but you
Roxbury.
never know where the house is.
Okay.
You know, they
I
don't
think they're in
tell
Roxbury
you.
somewhere.
Right, but they'll never
don't put an
tell you.
address.
They don't tell you,
There's
okay.
no address
No.
because it's the whole idea behind
Okay.
the house. But the Wilderness
cool.
Hill folks, the organization,
safe house, yeah.
they're in Boston. They're
Yeah.
right by the State Building. You know,
Oh.
that's where their office is.
Yeah,
So everything kind of gets funneled through them, and this is the biggest fundraiser for the Elizabeth Stone house.
And only women are allowed to go on this hike?
On the hike,
too?
but there's something else that men do. There's
Okay.
a part of it has like a men thing that they
Yeah.
do, right?
Because I'd be
So,
curious about that. They said like
yeah.
50 women were doing it.
It's a woman thing because the leading up to it, they have victims talk about how the house actually helped them through a situation, which
So
can
a
be
lot of
very
the women, are the
riveting.
women that are on the hike, are they, a lot
I'm
of them,
not su-
were
I'm
they
not
former
sure.
abusers? I mean, abuse
Not
victims?
necessarily
or-
helped through the Elizabeth Stone house, but they've experienced abuse, so they connect with it.
Not
that
everyone.
way.
Some of
Not
them are
everyone.
just, some were
of
just on
them
the
do.
hike to raise the.
Just to help raise
help
the fund
raise the
because
fund.
they believe
Right.
in the cause. They
Right.
believe that, like me. I
Yes.
mean, you know, to me, it's just like an area that I have learned so much about. You know, and just understand that it's not as easy as that could never happen to me. You know,
Yeah.
it's bigger than that. You know, so it's like, how do you get women to be, or men to be a little bit stronger before it gets to that point where you feel so trapped into the situation where you can't come out of it? Because there's so much to think about. You know, there's the financial piece of it.
Yep.
If you're the breadwinner in the house and you're the abuser, the person who's being abused, they're going like, what am I going to do? You know, how am I going to eat? That's the stuff they think
true.
about.
Right.
You know, never mind that he'd probably kill you tonight.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's it. They can't be. They're not
next meal
independent
coming from?
enough to
They're
go
not
out and
strong
get
enough.
jobs.
They don't feel confident enough
No.
about themselves that they can
Right.
make life for themselves, and that's what all these
Right.
sessions go through. You
Now,
know, building them up. So
Now,
they
this
can-
may be a bigger question than we can answer, but as we're talking, it's making me think, is that, would you know if there is any connection between that and police departments, law enforcement?
I'm not sure.
Because
between Elizabeth.
I've known police, you may know police, and that one of the things that they respond to is a lot of domestic abuse cases. And I wonder if there is any kind of vehicle from the police department to any other kind of a
Oh, I don't
resource
know.
like this. So if a police
There
gets
might be
called,
like a hotline.
but
or
if they
Yeah,
get
I
called,
think
yeah,
we're-
but I'm talking about action. For example, if you know,
Yeah, I
how
don't
many
know.
times have you heard that the police have been called for
Yeah.
fights, 20 times in a
Yeah.
month?
Right.
And they just go, and from my understanding, they just break it up and
Yeah.
say
Unless
whatever they
somebody
have to
files
say
charges,
and
there's nothing they
leave.
can do.
But I wonder if there is
O.J.
any kind
Simpson.
of process
Hmm.
in there where if they put some kind of a limit on there, like, okay, fine, if we get 2 or 3 domestic abuse calls,
Yeah.
automatically you need to go into the Elizabeth Stone for guidance. You need to get help.
See,
you need to
that's
go
almost-
somewhere.
That's almost like a mental health thing, right?
Yeah.
Where you
But I mean,
can't
but
force
some
it.
action. It's like it's like the
Yeah.
person who gets caught with the drunk driving. Where does the judicial system come in here?
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
where where does the judicial system step in? And again, it's too big of a question maybe
Yeah.
for us to answer, but it
Yeah.
makes me think if there was some kind of a conduit
Yeah.
with the police where they know that there is repeated domestic violence, fights, arguments, whatever,
Yeah.
that there's interject some kind of
I
mandatory.
think
But
unless
it's
they
more-
file
that
an
would be
injunction,
a-
like look at Jerry Remy's kid
Right,
years ago.
right, yeah.
Filed an
That's a good
injunction. It
example.
didn't
Yeah, but the
really
police
make any
don't. I
difference.
mean, they leave that to the
Because-
victim or
Yeah,
the
but
Because
family.
they can't.
They can't.
They're adults enough to make their own decision. It's
Right.
almost like mental health, that the
Yeah.
police know, that like the mother knows.
I mean, I
that
understand that,
something's
but
wrong.
I definitely don't agree with it. I mean, they have
No,
laws
right,
for.
you don't
Well,
agree
they
with
do,
it, but
so
that,
they
have
that
these-
would take another, that would
I don't
take
think the
like
police
a
can do
legal-
anything about
Right.
that. Legally, they don't
can't.
have the ability.
They don't
to-
have the
Well,
right to
then
do it,
change the
yeah.
law. Introduce
Well,
a
so
bill,
that's
then
a
you change the
different
law.
story.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
that's what they have to
But
do.
I
You know?
think that's something that Elizabeth Stonehouse could fight for.
That's true.
Like,
That's
okay,
you know.
maybe we need to change the laws on the book for
Just
this
put an
particular thing,
asterisk
right?
in there.
That's
Idea
right.
by
Just say-
Frank T.
yeah,
Walsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that's a joke. But I'm serious
sure
though.
they must have thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at
because
the-
you really want to
yeah.
stop it on the front end.
Exactly, and
but they must have thought about that, and probably a hard law to get anybody to pass.
It could
Especially when
be.
you think like a lot
Yeah.
of those lawmakers are abusers themselves,
Well,
So I
Yeah,
mean,
it might be.
you stop and think about it.
and-
It has
and
no.
the judicial system and the
And at what point do you do
government
that?
in
I know. Where is
Massachusetts, a
it? Yeah.
Where do you
conversation for
stop? When
another
do you,
day.
like, how do you,
Where-
maybe
at
part
what
of it is
point?
like, when do you draw the line? How do you know? Like, two or three might even be too late.
But oftentimes we
know?
draw the line after the fact
Yeah.
rather than
No,
before
I
the
agree.
fact.
I agree. But
And again, I
Yeah.
understand, you can stretch the logic
can-
and argue the thing,
yeah.
in perpetuity,
Right.
but oftentimes it doesn't get drawn until it's too late.
I think family plays a big part, and you almost have to, like the family in Braintree, that's kind
You're
of how
right, the
they
family
got
gets
into
My
it.
backyard.
They know that it's happening and they are on top of her, like working with
An
her. and
intervention
saying-
type thing.
Doing the
Yeah.
intervention piece. It takes a toll on the family too.
Oh, no question.
Oh, I
because
know.
the
I
shame
know.
of the whole
Yeah,
thing,
absolutely.
they don't want anybody to know, it's
No.
That thing with getting the police to do it, though, it sounds good. but
No, it's just, I'm not
does.
saying to do it, but
Yeah.
to just make some
Some
kind of
flag,
mandatory
like
thing
a
where they say,
warning
listen,
or
okay,
something, yeah.
you know, with the computerized systems we have,
Yeah.
they put it in there, I'm sure, because they're able to pull it up. Even though if I
Yeah.
call the house and I say, okay, yeah, we were at Mike Wigdor's house
Yeah.
5 times in the last month, they have all that
They
there.
have the 911.
So all they have to
report,
do is,
right?
you know, they can
Yeah.
put something in there that, okay, fine, this is the 3rd time
Yeah.
in a month
Yeah.
that we've been there.
Yeah.
There's a red flag there.
Yeah.
And that information should be
Oh.
able to be sent somewhere that this person could either be on a watch list or someone, you know, does
Yeah.
you know, send a social worker over there or something.
It sounds good,
does
but
sound
I
good.
think you're like stepping on freedoms there, right?
But you know
Like
what?
just
Could
said,
be.
you're right.
Yeah,
you know.
it does, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's enough
Sounds great,
incidences
yeah.
that something like that should have happened by
Yeah.
now if it was possible.
Right. I
Look
mean, you
at,
know, you get,
I
look
think,
at Nicole Simpson,
Right.
right? Remember
right.
that last 911 call when she said, "You know who he is," which means
Right.
she must have made several calls.
That's right. He
So
was
there's a
abusing her.
situation.
yeah. I mean,
Look at the power
and-
that he was
and-
throwing over on her.
Yeah.
and obviously,
yeah.
I mean, this is something like, you know, like the opioid crisis
Yeah,
and
it
drugs
is.
and all that.
Absolutely. It is,
You're never
absolutely.
going to win the war.
No.
It'll never go
No.
away. You can throw gazillions of dollars, never going to go
Yeah.
away. But my point is, why not try to reduce it?
Yeah.
Why not try to reduce it?
No,
I mean,
I
they
agree.
put safeguards in for everything.
I agree.
You know, they
true.
increase. You know, they increase
And the
parking
own-
tickets. They want to eliminate plastic bags.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing
Yeah.
all of these
The
things,
petty
which
things and
which
the
are
hard
worthy
things aren't
worthy
being
in their own
tackled, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I think we take people's rights and people's freedoms sometimes a little bit too far.
Right.
Sometimes a little bit too far.
Well, when there's an element
know.
of danger, but I mean, you have to, I agree with you. But
Look what
but,
happened
yeah,
to our
when
freedoms
there's an
after
element of
9/11.
danger.
Look what happened to our freedoms after major catastrophes.
Yeah.
I know.
We had to pull back.
Right.
Laws changed, restrictions changed. You can't
Yeah.
walk into buildings without getting frisked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's invading our freedoms.
Yeah.
Do you mind that?
No.
No.
Would you be upset if maybe 50 cents out of your paycheck went into pre-prevention of domestic abuse? Probably not.
I think he should be running for state senator.
I'm serious.
We'll vote for you, Frank,
Right?
for that domestic violence.
Sometimes
Please run
freedom,
with
you
that
know,
cal-
freedom.
run
Sometimes
on
I
that
think
agenda.
I really
That's right.
think
You
freedom
get all
stretched
the,
too far.
I agree.
And you
I-
get
I
bleeding
don't
heart
know.
liberals, which is a conversation for another day.
It is, because
Take
we're
it
running-
too far.
We're running
Yeah.
out of time.
I
You
know.
believe that?
Look at that. We
Wow.
talked about Elizabeth Stone the whole
That's right.
time.
It
Yeah.
was
It's a
excellent.
great topic. So
I
don't
think
don't
I-
forget.
That's right. Go ahead.
Go to wildernessheals.elizabethstone.org and donate to Alethea McFarlane.
For a great cause. to help
1,500.
prevent-
That's what I'm looking for.
That's right. To help prevent domestic violence. So until our next time, I am Mike Wigdor.
I'm Alethea McFarlane.
And I am Frank Walsh. We will see you down the road.
Oh my God.